Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. I shall see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today, where I am probably going to be talking about Kung Fu Panda 4. I'm going to be totally honest. There's a lot of thoughts I end up having about it. As you can tell from the title, maybe yes, this will be Kung Fu Panda centric episode. So I don't know if you're new to this. This is basically my video diary where I talk about random stuff. This is not me recreating Kung Fu Panda or anything of that sort in Animal Crossing. If that's what you're looking for, please do not watch this video. I'm just a random person with my own subjective thoughts. But yeah, I mean, I've just not just gone back, but like earlier today, I've gotten back from watching Kung Fu Panda 4, and it's okay, is what I'd say. But good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 8:27 p.m. on Saturday, March 30th, 2024. So I guess sort of context-wise, Kung Fu Panda, if you don't know, is basically the story about a panda who seemingly is not going to be a very good Kung Fu master, becomes a Kung Fu master, and people like it a lot, and myself included, as a series, as a franchise, because I think it's pretty good. I think it's basically kind of like up there with Shrek. DreamWorks very inconsistent with the movies it does very well and poorly on, to be perfectly honest. But after banger from DreamWorks of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish being probably the greatest animated movie I've actually ever seen, it's up there with like Spideyverse or something. It's like really, really good in my opinion. And it might be one of my favourite movies of all time. It's actually insanely good. You might not share that sentiment, which is totally fair. Like, opinions are subjective, and that's kind of what they are. Kung Fu Panda, I think, is also a really good series. Like, in my opinion, the first Kung Fu Panda is really good. It's a solid 8 out of 10, maybe up to a 9 out of 10, depending on the person. Kung Fu Panda 2, though, I think is kind of like the peak of the franchise. It's like really, really good, and I think it takes a very interesting sort of like darker twist, not twist necessarily, but darker perspective and turn on Kung Fu Panda, which makes it far more engaging at the same time of making it explore much more interesting sort of themes around everything. I'm just trying to see if there's actually no more KK Slider songs apart from Welcome Horizons, which I don't know if we have. We do have. Let me just check. Sonata, Song, Soul, Step, Stroll, Swing, Synth, Tango, Techno Pop, Waltz. I'm pretty sure we have all of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's Mr. KK. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Rockin'. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Steep. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So it turns out we have actually all the KK Slider songs. Sorry, Fauna, we're going to be talking about not KK Slider, Kung Fu Panda. So the first one, pretty good, to be perfectly honest, like a certified classic. Kung Fu Panda 2, phenomenal, like really, really good. One of the best villains, I think, certainly in any sort of animated movie. Most engaging one, and it does fantastically well with like telling a story, I suppose, and its structure. Kung Fu Panda 3 is okay, I would say. I think but there's some really cool moments in it. Like, I think the fight scenes can be kind of cool. I in my opinion, the whole Panda Village thing is like fine. It's like not that engaging IMO. I think it's cool. I mean, spoilers for, I suppose, all the Kung Fu Panda franchise. I'm not even going to do like mini and mega spoilers because I think I need a flow of conversation to keep it going. But like Panda Village stuff was okay. It's like alright, but like I don't know, maybe it's like spent too much time there or something, and the villain wasn't like as good as the first and second ones, who were like really good. The fourth one I've just watched is again on the okay scale. I don't know if I like it more or worse than Kung Fu Panda 3. One, it's been quite a while since I've seen Kung Fu Panda 3, so I don't quite remember it that well. And two, I think there's a sort of like a recency negativity, especially because Kung Fu Panda 4 I think has some really good potential, but it like squanders most of it, in my opinion. The main reason I would sort of say about Kung Fu Panda 4 is like it doesn't feel like it has that much of a connection story-wise. Sort of like it doesn't have as much a cohesive. Okay, it's got a kind of cohesive story, but one, it goes at like 1,000,000 miles per hour. It feels like I've watched like half a movie because it feels like half of development just disappeared. To be perfectly honest, bye bye. Like half of character development just sort of up and disappears. And two, a lot of the plot points don't kind of make sense, and some of the characters don't really get fleshed out, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of things to talk about, to be perfectly honest, with Kung Fu Panda 4. I think I'll start with the villain, because that's kind of like the main thing. Where in Kung Fu Panda 4, she's essentially just like a plot point. She's like a plot device, might be the better way to put it. She's just kind of there to make sure that they can bring back the other villains, kind of. She doesn't really do much significant throughout the entire story. You know, it's like the same issue I had with for Love and Thunder, is that like, the villain like didn't do anything. I mean, we see the first villain. The first villain had like this whole backstory. Like, he had a really intertwined backstory with Master Shifu and that sort of thing. I mean, you know, the first thing he does is basically escaping from prison. Really cool, really awesome. The second one, like by far and away the most evil villain probably of the franchise. He like committed a panda genocide, I suppose, by murdering all the pandas. You know, he was a spoiled brat of a exiled prince of a land or something, and he's got like a whole army subjugated to his will. The third one, he showed himself to be an incredibly formidable fighter, where he basically captured all the previous existing masters, including Master Uguay, and escapes from the spirit realm into the physical realm to wreak havoc. The fourth film, the villain, called the Chameleon, by the way, which I'll get onto like later, but why doesn't she have a cool name? Like, why doesn't she have like a Chinese name like Tai Lang and Shen and Kai, like from the other ones? Why is she just called the Chameleon? I don't really know. But there's a point I was maybe expand on that later, or why I thought she was going to, like, why I thought she wanted to refer to herself as a chameleon, what like plot point I thought would happen but didn't. She kind of like, okay, so what does she do? Like, in the beginning, she kind of shows that she's kind of threatening by basically extorting a load of other, like, crime bosses to basically be like, hey, I'm a head honcho in charge here, you can listen to me. Which is okay, you know, and I'm not going to say that's necessarily not evil, but it's not, like, crazy. Like, she doesn't do anything else particularly evil. I know people make a meme, and I've seen, like, read other people's opinions, that's something that the only thing she does is push people down the stairs. Which doesn't really seem like on the level of the others. But, you know, she is trying to be, I suppose, shown as like this sort of like extortionate, like, crime lord sort of. And except for the city itself doesn't seem like it's in that bad a spot, so like I don't really get that. And then it's only like towards like the last 10% of the movie where she actually does like something pretty evil, which is sort of just like reviving a load of like previous kung fu masters and just stealing all their abilities. And she has a cool first half of her final fight where it's just like, again, this is where I'm like lost potential. She is, if you don't know, a shapeshifter. So she can shapeshift into like literally anyone, or I guess in this case of the story, anyone that she has stolen the power from. Which I'm just like, that is, like, shapeshifters are such a cool potential, especially for something like an action movie like Kung Fu Panda is. For combat, you can be so creative with it. And the first half of her final fight was super creative, IMO, with like her constantly switching back and forth between people, which would be advantageous to a certain situation that she was fighting in. I was like, that's awesome. And then she kind of like changes into a chimera in the second half, which is like, okay, but, you know, I was like, I guess it's not as cool, IMO. Anyway, that's kind of all she like really does. She's very much a plot device, which is kind of weird, which also brings me on to my, I suppose, my second point about Zheng. Also basically just being an entire plot device, to be perfectly honest. Like, one, basically they're just not to serve as a character, but to serve as a plot point, which it feels kind of disappointing, because I'm just like, yeah, it could have been so much more. Also, the entire plot of Kung Fu Panda just sort of like hinges on Po wanting to choose a successor, despite the fact that I don't know if he's even been the Dragon Warrior for that long. I don't really understand why he needed a successor, but I'm willing to look past that, because maybe like that's something which, like, if you wanted to, you could easily fix this by being like, hey, there's a time skip. Whoa, crazy, I know, right? But yeah, I don't know. The biggest disappointment I had was with the villain and the whole like story of what they're trying to achieve in first place. I mean, they have a shapeshifter as the villain, and it's like, what are the plot points that they're trying to sort of like encroach in this one? Like, what was the first one? The first one is about, I suppose, seeking approval in some sort of sense, and like pride before, like not judging based off appearances as well, as Po finds like his own self-discovery to actually become a Dragon Warrior. And the second one's all about like letting go of a past and being able to move past your own trauma, you know, and how it reflects differently on different people, like Po being able to move past his trauma and Shen not being able to, thus the downfall of it, and also like how trying to avoid your destiny kind of makes you run into it. The third one, I don't really remember what the plot point of the third one is, I suppose. Maybe like power corrupts absolutely. Doesn't really. No, third one's about like finding out again, kind of who you are, who you're meant to be, discovering it in that sort of sense, right? Because it's like him trying to like be a panda, but also teaching a panda who they are at the same time. So I guess it's more about stories about teaching others, right? And the fourth one is like, what is a plot point? The plot point is about trust, kind of, and also kind of about things. I think the main plot point is about things changing, whereas like, oh, Poe needs to change because he's no longer the dragon warrior. He's going to be like a spiritual guidance. He needs to find a successor, and it's all about the change. I mean, it's like the comedian, I suppose, represents that because she's always changing, which doesn't make sense to me. As like, why would you would choose necessarily a comedian with that, I suppose, unless you were meant to like reflect it in like a Black Mirror sort of sense of what the bad side of change necessarily is. But like, as she says in the movie, it's like the only thing she does is change. So it's sort of like, this is weird, but this is a plot point about like is it like he's meant to learn it from the villain, kind of? I don't really know. I'm not saying that it can't be done, but I'm just saying that the way it was executed in this movie didn't quite have that sort of cohesive writing feel to me. It didn't have that sort of like punch. Anyway, and it's also like kind of about trust, sort of, where like, again, one of my major problems with the movie again is how like lightning fast the entire pacing goes, where like he befriends Jung like immediately, like seriously so quickly. I felt like I skipped out like so many scenes where it's like, why are they friends now? Like they like he just like met her like 10 minutes ago, and then it goes even crazier with the fact that like towards the end of him, maybe like 2/3 away from the movie, she betrays him, which I'm just like, this has no weight behind it, because I'm like, I don't even know why they're like friends in the first place. They have some good moments here and there. Like I like the moment, even though it's so super silly, of like showing Poe's kindness of him just like literally just giving her half the cookie and then her not trusting it. I'm like, that seems like a good setup for what things may be, but then they just like never expound upon that, I suppose. And there's also like the scene of her trying to recruit all the like thieves, I suppose, at the end to fight back against the comedian, which I'm just like, this is so underbaked. It feels really weird. Like at least the Kung Fu Panda 3 one, the Panda one's kind of felt right, because the entire plot point was about Poe teaching them about what pandas, who they are and who they could be. In that sort of sense, like she sort of runs in and then like they don't really understand what she's doing. It's kind of like, I guess how I describe it is this entire movie feels like it came with comedy first, then plot and story afterwards, which is fine. I'm not going to say that's necessarily wrong for a movie to do that. I think the thing that rubs me the wrong way about it is that Kung Fu Panda 1 is sort of like one which had a really good balance between story and comedy. Kung Fu Panda 2 is one which very clearly story came as a priority, and then comedy came afterwards. And then Kung Fu Panda 3 had like a weirdness where it's like kind of comedy a bit overshadowing the story, to be perfectly honest, but like it's sort of like an easy watch in that sense. And 4 is just sort of like comedy is like highly prioritized. Like I don't even know what Jung's story is. She's like a thief, and she's also somehow like really good at kung fu. She was trained up by masters, and then but like her master was comedian, but the comedian like her entire plot point of her being a villain is that she couldn't become a kung fu master that she wanted to because no one would take her because she was too small, which obviously that doesn't make sense, seeing as Viper and Mantis and Shifu are all tiny and also kung fu masters. So it's just like, what? And we've seen like Kung Fu Masters are pretty small. I don't know why they even need to say that she was too small. They should have just literally said that she was too weak or something, and that would have just been fine. It would have been boring, but it would have been fine. Like, saying she's too small just makes me go, what? I don't even understand why that would be enough to make her to become a villain, but whatever, okay. And then, like, I don't know. I think annoying thing annoys me, again, it's so much potential, because the comedian's design is straight fire, in my opinion. Her design goes really hard. Like, it's so cool, I think, as a villain. And then combined with shapeshifting, which is, like, one of the most coolest power, one of the coolest superpowers I suppose you can give. Perhaps too far into the land of fantasy, I think, for Kung Fu Panda necessarily, but I'm willing to give it a pass. Like, the thing that drives me crazy about this thing is, like, how is this chameleon not... Like all the villains are, I suppose, strong in their own right. Like, Tai Lung is, like, really... his physical prowess is unparalleled. It's crazy strong. Shen's strength, I suppose, as a villain is his, like, psychopathy, in a sense. His almost lack of remorse, his scheming, his sort of, like, spoiled, bratty nature, in that sense. shows that he's willing to do whatever it takes to achieve his goals. And the fact that, you know, the panda murdering all the pandas in existence is one of them, is just like, he's not something to be reckoned with. And Kai is just like, I guess also like kind of strong, you know, martially as well, but also that the fact that he can defeat the masters and now also has the masters on his side. He's got like this sort of overwhelming force behind him in the first place. It blows my mind. Like, the comedian, they were just like, what is her strength? And then her strength is like, she can be kind of the other villains, except for she's also not meant to be practicing martial arts whatsoever. So like, she sort of steals their powers, but unlike Kai, who like beat them in battle and then captured them to be his own pawns, she just like stole their power randomly at the end and then like just kind of uses it. I don't know. I guess it's not enough like payoff, but it blows my mind that she was not like a social force to be reckoned with in that sense. Like, she's a comedian. Like, okay, for one, maybe she could have been like an absolute killer assassin or something, you know, she could have assassinated masters along the line. There you go, she's super villainous now, and people wouldn't expect it because, you know, comedian magic's like, whatever, what the heck, no one's seen that before. But like, it blows my mind she was not like an expert manipulator, essentially. Why isn't she like a psychological fairy? Why doesn't she like cause like turmoil in all the cities, and she overthrows people before her by sowing distrust? Like, why isn't that a thing? Like, for one, the Furious Five aren't even like in this movie. They're sort of like written out so randomly. We're just like, oh, they're doing stuff, and then that's it. Which, from a business perspective, I understand, because they're like A-lister titles. For people who voice act them, like Angelina Jolie, Jackie Chan, Lucy Liu. I don't remember who voices a crane. Seth Rogen. Who's the voice of a crane? Hold on. Crane, Kung Fu Panda voice. David Cross or JC Chan? Apparently he had multiple voices? Genuinely didn't know that. Yeah, it sort of blows my mind, but it's just like, oh, I mean, okay, so business perspective, they can't hire Furious 5 again because it'd be too expensive probably to get Bay's A-listers back, which isn't, that's a whole nother story of like why like hiring stars versus hiring like voice actors, I suppose, for this sort of industry in the first place. Not to say that voice actors don't deserve to be paid more necessarily, but like, I mean, it's kind of like reflective of the industry that, reality of the industry, I suppose, that these like A-list celebrities do get paid insane amounts. But it's like, what I can't believe they didn't like bring the Furious 5 back and then have the comedian basically infiltrate them and sow distrust among them in the first place or something, or at least like say that she basically did it to like all the other sort of martial groups out there and like sow distrust and managed to usurp them in that way, like by doing it as an inside job. I mean, it was the Furious 5 sort of like find their way around like solving this in the first place. Like, it blows my mind that she's not like a social force to be reckoned with. Like, I guess it kind of like, she isn't really a force to be reckoned with, but still, I guess that's just like what kind of annoys me, because like, she could have been such a cool villain, IMO. And then like her backstory is just like, oh, I was too small, so then I couldn't be taught things. So like, why not like, I mean, like, one of the most obvious things I think for a theme to cover in this movie, with the fact you have a shapeshifter, is like this theme of facing yourself. Like, this is like the only time that Poe can face himself, right? I'm like way too passionate about this. I spent a long time now thinking about this. I don't know if I'm the only one who does this, but like, I overanalyze movies, and again, when the movie doesn't quite meet my expectations, I'm like, what would I have done differently? Like, if I was directing this movie, choices would I have made while directing and like writing and editing this movie? Obviously that never come to pass, and I'm not a professional, so obviously what I say is probably actually terrible, but you know, I can't help but toy with the ideas in my mind. But it's like, the most obvious thing is like the facing of oneself. Like, why not just give her a backstory which would have been like reasonably similar to Poe's, except for she turned out to be a villain instead because she didn't have like Poe's resilience. Like, just do that. Like, I don't know, she always wanted to be a kung fu master, but then she was also always laughed at because of her skills or something, because her skills are all about shapeshifting as a comedian, which meant that she never had skills of her own. She could only be someone else to be a thing, and then she was always sort of like, people didn't respect her because of it. Okay, like, boom, take part of that part, and then you could just be like, oh, all her family's dead, she's also an orphan or something. Boom, now it's like reflective of Poe's upbringing as well. And then she didn't have a resilience or whatever, she didn't have the same mindset, maybe she didn't have the same people in her life, thus she became the villain and Poe didn't. And then it's sort of like, oh, you can have this really cool moment where she transforms into Poe in the end, and it's like literally a fight against himself but from like a different reality, and he has to come to accept like what his own shortcomings are and like mourn for the loss of what the person that she could have been, because maybe she could have been Poe in like another life, or I don't know, something like that. Just, I don't know, it's just like something along those lines. It feels like a thematic which could have been explored. I know. Like, that's the thing. We're going to run on long here, I think, with this conversation, because I just have so much to say. It's the thing which I think about this villain. There's like two ways to go about it, I think, of like fixing it. One way is make her even more villainous, make her horrific. Like, as I say, make her like a super assassin or something. Make her basically usurp and throw revolutions and distrust within martial order, I suppose, in like different lands, because she can just shapeshift it into people and cause issues. Make her like a real force to be threatened with, and then give Jung like any backstory whatsoever. Make Jung much more redeemable, as in like someone who had to do bad things for, who wanted to do good things but had to do bad things for good reasons, etc., etc. And then she can sort of become Poe's protege in that sense, and it's sort of like a reflection of that way. And then like she, just like the chameleon is Jung's mentor, she can be like a dark reflection of a mentor who's just like there to be a master manipulator and exploit her. Like what also was crazy to me is like she kind of is meant to be shown as like really manipulative and that sort of thing, but then she has a conversation with Jung as Jung is just like, so when I'm like no use of you, you'll get rid of me. Like, I don't think a master manipulator like she, like the chameleon, is meant to be. We just go, yeah, you're right. Like, obviously, I feel like the chameleon should have then played on Jung's heartstrings more and been like, no, of course I care for you, or something like along those lines, and make Jung feel like real inner turmoil about the entire situation in the first place. Makes it hit harder when she fights back, because now she's like fighting this demon where it's like, I can't tell if you are being nice to me or not, that sort of thing, you know? I don't know, I'm just like, I'm spitballing like crazy here, but it's just like it makes so much sense in my head, but again, maybe in practice and paper it doesn't really pan out. But yeah, make her a villain. Make her evil, make her scary, I suppose. The only thing you had to be careful is you don't make her too similar to Shen, I suppose, who was also like quite manipulative in that sense, but, you know, he's more like a scary force to be reckoned with, while she can be like a very sort of underhanded, undermining force to be reckoned with. The other thought that I think actually kind of works better is if you just sort of get rid of Jung as a character. You might be like, is it because you don't like Aquafina? I don't actually have anything against Aquafina in this movie. I think it's kind of more the character was quite bland. Like the character was kind of comedic is what I'd say, but like there was not much character depth for a character, and I didn't really have anything against Aquafina. I wouldn't say she was like stand out amazing or anything in it, but she was fine. But it's like, get rid of that character entirely and make the chameleon the redeemable villain, because all the other previous three villains have just sort of been defeated. Like Tai Lung, like defeated, sent to the spirit realm. The second one, Shen, where like he was given the chance of redemption, then he refused it to try and give one last like fight against Poe, and then Kai just got like obliterated in the spirit realm. I guess Tai Lung could have been redeemed, but maybe that's like for Kung Fu Panda 5 or something. But Kung Fu Panda 4, she could have been like a villain to be redeemed, you know? Like, give, as I say, give her like a parallel backstory to Poe and that sort of thing. And then, like, when the Poe has a showdown, when Poe like learns more about her, he sees that her life could have been so much more different had just like a few things gone her way or something. And then maybe he like has a reflection of like how his life could have been like that as well. And then like a Furious 5 help him realize that no, he's the one who managed to withstand through all of it. And then it could be like a story about perseverance through even the hardest of times, or like being able to redeem yourself for past mistakes, because then it can sort of be like the same way that Shifu had that sort of reflection with Tai Lang as him, a teacher failing a pupil. Maybe Poe can have that sort of same realization with Chameleon, although again it's harder to get that, I suppose, across in like the same hour, and it's not quite the same thing because it's not like years of training, etc., etc. But Poe realizes like the world failed her, and he sort of can give her the chance at redemption, and then she can be unique in a villain, she actually takes it for once. And that's where we go on to the next thing, where I'm just like, that's what I thought maybe might happen, is because she was called the Chameleon, because then she can be called Master Chameleon at the end. Like all the rest of your Furious 5 are named after animals, like Master Monkey, Master Crane, Master Tigress, Master Viper. They're all named after the animals they are. Instead of being given like a Chinese origin name, she would then be like Master Chameleon and be like on the same sort of level of those, and her arc is one of redemption. Well, I don't know if necessarily she joins the Furious 5 or whatever, but you know, maybe she could. And she would give like an interesting plot point to them, where she was like a formerly redeemed villain, because like you can have redeemable villains, like as much as is a popular trend, I suppose, nowadays, of having villains who aren't true villains in that sort of sense, and people are pining for very much true evil villains again. It doesn't mean you can't have redeemable villains. just has to sort of make sense in it. I don't know. These are just sort of my thoughts, and I'm sorry for like blabbing on and on about it, but it's just sort of like, I don't know. Like, I want to be clear. Kung Fu Panda 4, I think, is a solid like 6, maybe 7, depending. It's very similar to Kung Fu Panda 3, which I think, in my opinion, Kung Fu Panda 3 is a 7. I think it kind of depends on what you value more. I can tend to value like story and characters more, so I say Kung Fu Panda 3 is a bit better because the characters and stories make more sense. But if you like action, if you like cool cinematography, I think Kung Fu Panda 4 has like quite a few interesting shots and transitions and stuff with it. I think its comedy also is pretty decent as well. Kung Fu Panda 3's I don't really remember. I think a lot of the comedies centered on like pandas being kind of like chubby creatures and like kind of silly in that sort of sense. I don't know. I have so many thoughts. Maybe it will like resurface itself in a future episode, but I will actually talk about like a motif or something in that one. But I'm just like, the comedian could have been such a cool villain. I can't believe this happened. But apparently there's Kung Fu Panda 5 and Kung Fu Panda 6 coming out, so I don't know. At the very least, I hope if those get made, it's not squandered potential as well. It's times like these where I'm just like, I wish we could remake these bad things. I know that's so stupid because like it doesn't make sense in reality. Like, why would they release Kung Fu Panda 4 be like, oh no, critical reception is not exactly what we thought would happen, and then like 2 years later they're like, we're gonna remake Kung Fu Panda 4. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, I don't know, it's not a video game or something. But it's times like these where I'm like, I wish it could happen. I wish I could like change reality in my brain. So it's just like, okay, you know, let's make it, I want to see what this movie could have been, you know, in a parallel dimension where the story and the plot like added up together. Maybe that's like self-serving of me in some sort of sense, and honestly I think it kind of is, but it's true. I'm not going to deny it. I think about it. It's a thing about like when I see something which I'm like, no, wasn't really quite my jam, or I feel like it could have been better, I think about like what I would have done differently, how I could have made it like a good movie or something. And the answer is I probably couldn't have, because again, I'm not a seasoned director or writer or anything like that. But it's still fun to think about. I mean, it's in my mind. I can do whatever I want in my mind. And then I can rewrite Kung Fu Panda 4 if I so choose to. Anyway, I didn't really talk about the first 3 Kung Fu Pandas, but like first and second are like, as I say, really good, and third one is fine. This one is probably along the levels of 4. Like, I really didn't like it after I first watched the movie, but like after reflecting on it, I think it's fine. It just didn't really hit the mark, I suppose. I think it probably is about the same level as Kung Fu Panda 3, in my opinion. But again, I haven't watched Kung Fu Panda 3 for ages. But I'm going to round this episode up here, so if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope you see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.